Hi there, Bill Hitchcock. Not in my normal set, not in a normal environment, and the reason why is I wanted to get to you as fast as possible. The Wildlife Resources Commission just finished their February 5th meeting about 10 minutes ago on speckled trout. There's a lot of other things we're talking about, but specifically I wanted to get to speckled trout. Got the video of it. There's two parts to this. The first part is talking about proposed regulation changes, size and creel limits with speckled trout in inland waters, in joint and inland waters. This is not coastal waters because we're dealing with the Wildlife Resources Commission, which deals with only inland and with joint waters. Then the second part is a little bit lengthy, but really listen to it. This is where they're talking about, are they going to shut down the inland waters to speckled trout due to the cold stun? They don't have proclamation authority. Are they going to seek it? Were there any motions that were suggested and passed during this meeting? Yes, there were. So that'll be the second video. This first one, they're going to be talking about the potential or proposed changes on how many speckled trout in inland waters you can keep and what size.
And then we have a proposal for sea trout. Now, I'll be speaking in a minute about a different issue with sea trout, but this one is a planned change, if you will, based on the fisheries management plan that is under consideration for adoption by marine fisheries. And so based on the fisheries management plan, it would recommend that in the inland fishing waters and the joint fishing waters for hook and line only, we establish a no possession limit, slot limit of 20 to 26 inches and reduce the daily creel limit from 4 fish per person to 3 fish with only 1 fish greater than 26 inches. And the minimum size limit of 14 inches will be retained. So this would be consistent with what is being proposed for coastal waters and as well as for joint waters other than hook and line.
Alrighty, I want to jump on into it, into the meat of the whole thing. As we know, cold stun event has happened. Does the Wildlife Resources Commission, which is in charge of the inland, joint and inland waters, do they have authority to make a change? Because as we know, the Division of Marine Fisheries, which is in charge of the coastal waters, they shut down the speckled trout fishery. It hasn't, but will the Wildlife Resources Commission shut down the inland waters? They don't have proclamation authority. Are they going to seek it? What are the things they are talking about? Again, I just recorded this 10 minutes ago. Take a look at what happened at the meeting and see what's about to happen.
Okay, I mentioned earlier that we'd have sea trout come back, and as many of y'all have probably heard, the Division of Marine Fisheries has issued a proclamation that closes the season in their jurisdiction because of cold stun. I'll just read this. Commercial and recreational spotted sea trout fishery in coastal and joint fishing waters will be closed due to cold stun events in accordance with the North Carolina Spotted Sea Trout Fisheries Management Plan. Spotted sea trout fishery will open June 15, 2025 by proclamation unless the reopening date is modified by adoption of Amendment 1 to the NC Spotted Sea Trout Fisheries Management Plan. So just to give you a little background on really what is a cold stun, and this information is consistent with what is presented in the FMP, but it really deals with the sea trout's cold tolerance. They begin to lose equilibrium when they get down to 2 to 4 degrees C, which that's about 35 degrees to 39 degrees Fahrenheit. So when you have these cold weather events, in particular when you have snowfall like we had and the snow melt, it can change the water temperature fairly quickly, and that can result in, like I said, the loss of equilibrium, ultimately potentially mortality. And some of the work that was done through NC State showed that with lethal temperatures related to the length of time of exposure, if you're at 3 degrees C, which is about 37 degrees Fahrenheit, for 2 days, you're going to see 100% mortality. If you're at 5 days at 5 degrees C, it's 7%. For 10 days, it goes up to 85%. But if it's 7 degrees for 10 days, it's only 17%. So there's variability there, and it's not 100% mortality generally, because the fish can find refuge here or there, but it definitely does result in mortality. So from that standpoint, the FMP talks about population impacts from a cold stun. And so certainly mortality, it can reduce stock size, and that annual cohort strength, as those spawners are, may die in the cold stun. It's hard to quantify the severity of a cold stun event, because again, those fish are moving around, and they may be just a few hundred yards downstream and find a refuge that's a degree warmer, and that's the difference. The fisheries management plan states that eliminating or reducing the harvest after a cold stun event protects the remaining standing stock biomass. So basically, fish that survive, trying to give them protection to be able to spawn in that given year. So where does that leave us? Marine Fisheries definitely has done Proclamation. Their Proclamation is based on the FMP, which their commission approved, and so they're set. But that Proclamation doesn't apply to inland waters or joint waters if you're fishing by hook and line, or at a minimum, at least it conflicts with the rule we have on the books. And so there's been a lot of questions, several commissioners, but also the public, are asked, what can we do? What are we going to do? And several options we've been asked about several options. So I wanted to lay those out for you here. So the question is, could you use emergency powers? Kind of like it was done with CWD. And the answer there would be no, because it's very specific that it's to respond to wildlife disease that threatens wildlife or the public. And cold stun is not that. Emergency rulemaking is to address a serious or unforeseen threat to the public health or safety. Once again, this fish kill is not a public health or safety issue. We do not have proclamation authority. The proclamation authority we do have is specific to coastal striped bass, and it's only for opening and closing the harvest season. We do have authority, and I'll talk about this a little more, but we could use temporary rulemaking. It would not be effective until May 1st, because we'd have to go through the rulemaking process, but that is certainly an option. Permanent rulemaking is always an option, but the timing of it would be such that by the time it was in place, the Marine Fisheries Proclamation would have ended and the season would be reopened. And then, of course, always the option of no action, which would mean harvest would remain open in inland fishing waters and joint fishing waters when taken by hook and line. So to summarize, of all those potential options, there's really two choices that you have here. One would be temporary rulemaking, and if you decide to do temporary rulemaking, then we would bring a temporary rule tomorrow that would close the season until June 15th, and we would then notice that. We would have a 15-day public comment period. We'd collect public comment and then bring it back to you in April for you to decide whether or not you wanted to proceed with it based on the public comment that you had received.
April to put something into place.
Yes, because you have to follow the rulemaking process. It would be May 1 before it could be effective, because you have to go through the whole process of public comment or public input, and then y'all would have to vote on it, and then it would still have to go through Rules Review Commission. They would have to vote on it, and it would have to be put in place.
May 1 to June the 15th.
And then it would be, yes, and then we would close it May 1 through June 15th.
From a biological standpoint, fish still in the waters in that period of time.
Yeah, that was a great question. You're thinking one step ahead of me. So right now, unfortunately, many of the fish are in inland waters right now because they have moved up in the creeks, and that's where folks are targeting them. So they're in those joint waters and inland waters right now. You know, by the time you get around to May, those fish have started to move back out. And so, you know, are there some fish in inland waters? But the vast majority of them are gone by that point.
Other than just affecting a small amount of the fish, it's more wind address than it is biological.
Yes, sir. I don't know that. Yeah. I don't know that this temporary rule would have a significant impact on a biological impact. But it's the only option. And the one thing about the temporary rule is, you know, we've been hearing from the public, pros and cons. You know, the temporary rule, you know, does give you the option to hear formally from the public as to what their interests are in terms of closing the season. Yes, sir.
Just the optics. I've seen quite a few dead fish around the noose around New Bern just floating. I mean, I just took a picture of one. I showed these guys. I mean, it's out there. I mean, you know, the extent of the kill, I don't know, but I've seen it with my own eyes. So.
Yeah, we've seen quite a few photos, yeah, it's, you know, it's a combination. It was really cold there for multiple days, so we were likely to have a cold stun. And again, cold stun is not a new thing. I mean, it's been happening for hundreds of years. But this year just happens to be a year where we had a really longer cold snap than what we've had recently. And then again, the snow, I mean, when you get 6 to 8 inches down the coast and then that snow melts. But those are the two options. And so I guess that's what I would ask of the committee is do we want to pursue temporary rulemaking? And if so, we'll be prepared for tomorrow, or again, the other option would be no action.
Instead of no action, could have put out a press release acknowledging that we don't have the authority to do much here other than discourage people from fishing for sea trout during this time. And
absolutely. And I would say that messaging, we would pursue that regardless of what action y'all take, trying to explain where we are. To date, we've explained why we haven't been able to do anything immediate, but we were waiting until today to figure out exactly what the ultimate message was, which is, you know, either exactly like you said, or it would essentially be exactly what you said, but we are going to try to pursue temporary rulemaking.
Jim, did you have your hand up?
I did. And first off, did it at what Brad said. I think that's probably going to be the biggest bang for our buck at this stage.
Sure.
But I'm also wondering if we were to put a rule into place May 1, I understand it would have minimal but possibly some effect on the trout population, but minimal. It's not huge. But what's the con to not doing the con to not, or the con to doing the rule? If we do the rule, and who's being hurt by that, or we're not hurting anything other than just eliminating from May 1 to June 15th the ability to harvest sea trout. I mean, is there a downside to that, although it's minimal effect?
Yeah, I think that's the end result. It is minimal effect. It is a cumbersome process for minimal return, but you know that is the option we have before us, and certainly we can pursue without real issue.
So really, I would suggest that we not do that.
Yeah.
I would just suggesting be clear to reality of the situation.
Yeah.
From a
Yeah.
biological.
That's what I was
The best thing to do is probably get pursue temporary rulemaking. I wasn't saying not do it. I just wanted to be clear about, how effective.
Yeah, it seems
may
to be
hold
like
up a
it's
bit.
a cumbersome process, with minimal effect versus her efforts into getting the word out. That this is the situation we have now. I think the response blanket respond well, better than I think we did.
Let's go back to what Mike said. Whether we put it in effect or we don't is not going to really do a damn thing. Period. It's not going to do anything to the fish population. But you got to be aware of the optics of the situation, because perception is 99% of the truth. So, I'm not going to make a motion one way or the other, because it's not going to affect the population. But the optics of it makes it a big deal.
Hey,
Christian, you getting some calls. Are they all in favor of, are they all suggesting we do something?
No, well, no, we're kind of getting both. There is a contingency that thinks that all those fish down east are mismanaged, and so therefore, they're generally just opposed to any action that marine fisheries takes. So we've heard that, but I have also taken calls of folks that, for every other issue, have been in that boat, so to speak, but are concerned because they see this as a natural event that is impacting the fishery and is at nobody's fault. It's just nature, and we need to do our part to address it.
So not to put you on the spot, but I want to put you on the spot. I mean, if you were making this decision, what route would you go?
I would recommend going forward with the temporary rule. I think that's the right thing to do. I also think that moving forward with the temporary rule, it helps with the messaging, because if we're going to say we encourage folks to be cognizant of this issue, be cognizant of catch and release mortality, things of that nature, but at the same time, we're not taking whatever steps we can take. There's a little bit of a mixed message there. So
Perhaps this is also a teaching moment to the General Assembly that we need authority to be able to act in situations like this, which we don't have now, and Marine Fisheries Commission does.
before I call on you, Brad's kind of beat me to the punch. So when the General Assembly was opposed, when we tried to get proclamation authority before, it's because we wanted to have overall authority, because that makes sense for us to have that, right? They might find it more palatable to give us proclamation authority if that action puts us in compliance with the proclamation for marine fisheries. Because that's the problem we have here, right?
That's part of where the problem is. Y'all correct me, I'm just the old head in history part here. My recollection is we tried to do that. That's true. My recollection, when we tried to do that, who opposed our ability to do it was the Division of Marine Fisheries. And that's where it got stopped. If I remember that correctly.
The Fisheries Association, but what John said would put us in agreement with them. Proclamation that puts us in agreement with them. And that way there's no conflict. All we're doing is eliminating a conflict.
What they're afraid of is that we're going to do something on that we can have a proclamation that have a commercial side.
We wouldn't write it that way.
We wouldn't write that.
Yeah, because that's what we tried before we got him, right?
Yeah.
So we would have the option of being in compliance with their proclamation, but not be required to be.
That's what I. So we're still.
That would be.
Well, and if it's worded correctly, and we're good with it, I'm fine with it. I wish we had right now. All I'm just saying is we tried it before we got shot down by the Division of Marine Fisheries. But all right, and now my second point. Hang on. Very rarely do I find myself at odds with the staff, but on Christian's recommendation, I find myself on the opposite side of that. And in a very rare situation, the only that is, by the time whatever we take effect, our rules will take effect, there will be no more cold stun events at all. And all we're going to do is prevent sportsmen being able to fish for them during a period of time. I think there, we're not gonna affect the event at all. All we're gonna do is deprive the public of getting that fishing.
So
That would be a
let
problem.
me ask Christian a quick question.
Yes.
Christian, the reason to do this, if we have proclamation authority, would be to prevent sportsmen from catching the fish because the population's been hammered.
Yeah,
So what we would want to stop them from fishing for them, is that right?
that would, yes, that's the thought process behind their fisheries, the fisheries management plan, is that in the case of a natural cold stun, the population has already had an excessive amount of mortality. And so therefore, additional harvest would just be insult to injury, if you will.
Which is a small, I'm sorry.
So I just wanna, I'd love to see us have proclamation authority. I really want our attorney to advise us on the wording, because to have a proclamation authority that just kind of connects us with marine fisheries that we can only, are we only using it when they use it, and, where can we use it? I mean, God, let's just be real careful about, let's get proclamation authority, but put so many limits on it that it really doesn't do what it's supposed to do for us.
So Commissioner Trek, that work on you would have our authority, right? But you're exactly right. It needs to be something we have a lot of, but not all.
Yeah.
I have a question of it. When does the spawn occur?
The spawn is typically April timeframe, April, May.
When it goes through the summer. So generally by August, they're done. So why is the fisheries open and fishery back up during the spawn, if there's a spawn occurring? Because that's what we're concerned about, is catching and what fish are left over before they reproduce. Why do they pick June 15th? And obviously, if the spawn goes to the summertime, our closing on May, have some effect. It would be minimal, but would have some effect on the population.
So this is from their original fisheries management plan, and it's set date, that was 15th date is a set date. If you look at their, Christian said that maybe the very first slide he shared, that this date could change based on recommendations to Amendment 1. And in Amendment 1, they actually had this date, June 30th, and October 1st options. So they may be moving this date.
So they have not. It says probably not a temporary rule for May 1st until at least the end of spawn, even though if you fish in our joint inlet waters. Why don't we make it longer than there?
Yeah, I think that's where the biology actually would come into it, is the fact that, those fish are moving out of the creeks and moving offshore to spawn. So they're in a different location when they spawn, so it's a different fishery. I mean, it's the same fishery, but it's a very different fishery in the sense that where they're being targeted and how they're being targeted would be very different. So for us to put that restriction on, there just wouldn't be a biological reason. But at the same time, you're not likely to catch many trout up in our waters from August anyway. But if you do, you could harvest it.
Commissioner Berry?
To me, this is all PR, but I think the biology of what I'm sensing in here is not if we decide to temporary rule, the effect will be in the eyes of the fishermen out there, will be the more conservation than if they don't do this stuff, right? So I've talked to fishing guys, I've talked to CCA guys, I've talked to just non-fishermen out there, and they're all in favor of doing something. Now, what I really like to know is from making the authority standpoint, how long will it take us to get proclamation? You write it up, whatever. How long is it? We don't have proclamation. I said how long it take. We legislate it. We had it on it. What is that?
another session, if there we have an update.
That chance to that for this decision is non-existent. So, 2 years could be there. But I think that's some 36,000. So, I got an answer. So, I think you, Christian, I think if we're rulemaking, this is a signal we're concerned about the period, and that we're trying to be proactive, and we're trying to do something that is in concert with fishery, whether we like it or not. I think it's very positive. So, even though I don't think it's big impact or not.
It's a motion, Commissioner Berry. We have to approve.
I make my motion.
Along with Vice Chair they can have mortality on what an agency factor or natural mortality. Does our regs take into consideration of natural mortality, and is that easy done?
Yes, so our regs are again based on marine fisheries action, and their FAE does take in to consideration natural mortality, but then this would be an event where natural mortality exceeded, there was additional natural mortality on top of what was already factored into the models.
Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we proceed to temporary rulemaking, and also perhaps add language subject to what Commissioner Craig alluded to relative to flexibility on the dates for our biologist recommendations going forward.
Is there a second to that motion?
So moved.
Motion has been seconded. What discussion do you have about that motion?
I'd just like to add one other point to it, if I may. Just as somebody who had a great speckled trout harvest myself, and I just think if we didn't take action here, and perhaps going forward next year, we saw a major contraction in the fishing season. I think that could rebound against us in a negative light for not having taken whatever action we could have taken, even though it may be de minimis in terms of its outcome.
Commissioner, I agree with you. Also, it might be easier for Ashton to go talk to the General Assembly.
Yes.
About what we did.
Yes.
Because it's all we do. This is what we need to help us out.
Mr. Chair, this doesn't really have anything to do with the motion. Are there any other species affected by this cold?
Yes, absolutely. Spotted sea trout is really the least tolerant, and so it's the one that you always have issues. But similar species that exhibit similar habitats, like red drum, for example, also there is mortality. It's not mortality to the extent that it is here, but it is mortality. And this isn't just a North Carolina problem. I mean, we've seen photos and video recently of major kills in Alabama that involved red drum that was a cold stun event.
I looked at Tamara, gave me a look, and I know what that look meant. We need to have a definitive date on rulemaking. So that I would suggest that we leave it just as they recommend. That you amend
my motion to, yes, sir.
Hey, Bert, anything you want to
June 30th.
If we are going to pursue proclamation authority for an event like this, should it be limited to cold stun events or heat stress events, hurricane, stormwater events that cause fish kills? These are extraordinary circumstances that we need to be able to react to. So if we're going to try to get proclamation authority, it shouldn't be limited to just cold stun.
Commissioner Stanback, as I'm understanding you, that's more of a recommendation, not an amendment to this motion. Right. So we can talk to the people that do that in the General Assembly about how to achieve that. Any other discussion?
hold on just a minute. Tamara's still in my ear. Go ahead.
explain to.
So what Emery here are saying, suggesting is, so if the temporary rule were to, that we noticed was to October 1st, based on public feedback and based on information we learned between now and then, we could always shorten it. If it's June 15th, and that's what's noticed, we cannot lengthen it because that would be more restrictive instead of less restrictive. So,
But will we know, will Division of Marine Fisheries, make a decision on either extending or not extending their date by our April meeting? Probably not.
I don't think we're.
An April meeting?
Yeah.
No.
Do we have to notice and go through a whole process for shortening it? Can we do that by? So you could do that just based on comments. But again, I mean, if we're not going to have any more information, I think part of the problem is, so while I don't disagree with Commissioner Craig's assessment, part of the problem is on June 15th, if our rule is then in effect and it's prohibited in our waters and Marine Fisheries opens it back up, it creates the same problem then for our constituents, because then they can't fish under our rules, but they can under Marine Fisheries rules, which I think we all know where we think the actuality and whose rules take precedent, but that puts our officers in a bind as well.
Do you have a
recommended
date for an amended motion, Kate?
I would recommend June 15th.
June 15th, sir.
Margo, can you read the motion as amended?
All I have is that Alfred made a motion to go with the temporary rule with a date.
Amended to June 15th. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. So the motion passes.
So we will bring that tomorrow for actual commission action.
Thanks, Chris. You kind of woke up the Fisheries Commission. Southern Management Area Striped Bass.
Yes, I will. Before I do that, I did want to say one thing about Proclamation Authority. The last time that we sought Proclamation Authority, it was very specific to instances where there was some type of human health issue, such as COVID, or it was related to some type of event, fish kill in particular, that would impact a population. And, examples of that beyond just things like cold stun is like the coal ash spill that happened on the Dan River. There was no action that this commission could actually have taken. And so that we had bounds on it. And then as y'all talked about, there was a fear that we would somehow impact commercial fishing, and that's where that ended.
That still exists today. I just want to be clear about that in all these discussions.
Yes.
Move to the next item, since we're talking about Proclamation Authority. I'd like to know from a commission standpoint, when is appropriate time to suggest that we proceed with Proclamation Authority?
Let's discuss that after.
Okay.
Yeah, so Christian, your point's well taken. It's not going to be easy to do this just because it's us, right?
Yeah.
But it would have a shot. It'd be worth it. It wouldn't be a waste of action.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify what we actually asked for in, I think that was 2021.
Mr. Stone, as you know, they created a committee last time just to stop that.
It ain't going to happen.
You remember the agency bill or give up the proclamation?
Actually, I think they created that before then.
Well, close to it.
In anticipation of something.
Close to it.
Well, let me walk that back. I understand your point, Commissioner Crump. Commissioner Windham?
I'm in total agreement with Chairman Crump in the fact that we can go up there waving the flag for Proclamation Authority right now. The chances of us getting are slim and damn none, in my opinion.
That's overall Proclamation Authority. Yeah, that's a heavy lift, right? Yeah. This may have a shot because it's just bringing us in compliance with what Marine Fisheries is already doing. It's a whole different thing. Still a heavy lift.
The committee, I don't know if this is the appropriate time or if you want me to wait till additional topics, but I just wanted to get a feel, maybe we do wait for additional topics of any changes to leadership at DEQ, DMF, appointments, directors, et cetera.
Yeah, let's save that for the end.
Yeah.
I'm Bill Hitchcock. Hope you've enjoyed this program. We got the information out to you as fast as possible and as straightforward as possible. Didn't edit any of that in regards to the speckled trout. I'm sure we'll get some more information as time goes by, but you heard it straight from the Wildlife Resources mouth of what's going on with speckled trout. Do you think they should have proclamation authority? What do you think? Let me know. I'm Bill Hitchcock. See ya.
Post your questions, comments and concerns here on YouTube or email them directly to Bill Hitchcock at this address.